All right, class. I know it's weird that I'm not there, and it's awkward for you to probably be watching the presentation, but I'm going to actually be in Sacramento later on this afternoon, and I won't be back in Fresno, so I decided to pre-record the part of the presentation for my group. I'll be talking to you about political and legal environment, as well as the economic and currency system in India. So beginning with the political and legal environment, India is known as a union of states. It's a sovereign socialist, secular, democratic republic that has a system of government that's sort of similar to, I guess, Britain or the UK with the parliamentary system of government. And in that, there's basically a prime minister. There's a prime minister, a vice president, a president, governors, chief ministers, judges of Supreme Courts, and of course, members of parliament. India has a multi-party system with a predominance of small regional parties, political parties that wish to actually contest local or state or national elections are actually required to be registered by the Election Commission of India. Now, I'm not sure about the details of how the Election Commission of India actually works, but I know that from the research that in order to gain recognition in a state, the party must have had actual political activity for five consecutive or continuous years, and actually send, I believe, 4% of the state's quota to Lok Sabha. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but there's two houses, just sort of like how we have a two-house system, and that is the Council of States, which is, I'm not good with the Indian language, Raya Sabha, and the House of People, which is Lok Sabha, and those two serve as the two houses which need to receive percentages of the state quota for election for a party to be recognized. As far as doing business within India, political and legal or political risks that arise, there's three things that were found in an article that have been sort of on the watch since the summer of 2012, and will kind of remain on the watch until the end of the election at the end of May. And those three things are: there's signs of progress on key reform legislation, but this could lead to major backlash, street protests from opposition parties and allies within the government, and not sure how the actual the reform will go, but the significance of it is that it can lead to actual protest from multiple parties. There's also more of the same weak economic data. Actually, inflation sped up to 7.55% in May, back in 2013. And exports have sort of slumped the industrial output to almost stagnant. So looking at the economical data, there's not much there, and they're still looking at it becoming weakened in a sense that they're not receiving much more to figure out how to fix that situation. Rating agencies are acting on their threat of a downgrade, and so these three signs right here are sort of, I guess, red flags to looking at the political risk within India. On the economical side of things and the currency side of things, it's important to understand that even though India is a relatively stable democracy, it faces many challenges to effective governance due to its size and diversity. And actually looking at their specific dollar, well, their currency system is the Indian rupee, and it's in relation to our dollar. It can be divided by 100, so how our dollar has 100 pennies, the rupee has 100 pennies. And again, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's sort of similar on that way. Now, when you increase the rupee, it increases in tens of thousands. So how our dollar can increase by dollar, and then 100, and 1,000 and 10,000. Theirs is rupees increase in tens of thousands. So not by one, but obviously tens of thousands. Looking at the actual economic side of things, the RBI, which is the Reserve Bank of India, it's identified five risks that actually face the country economically. And these risks are as follows. There is economic growth drag, sticky retail inflation, slowdown in export growth. There's a risk to CPI inflation, and then downside risk to future growth. And I'm going to sort of explain what I have here written down for those 5 risks. And that is that India has actually begun to see retrenchment in both the consumption and investment. So companies investing into the country, and also consumers just purchasing products. You're seeing a lot of that decrease and a lot of that actually being cut off. And it's sort of led to that drag in the economic growth side of things. As far as the retail inflation, it's been measured by CPI and moderated for the 3rd month in succession in February this year, but it's driven lower by sharp disinflation in food prices. And even though the prices of fruits and milk and other products as far as food have started to come up, they're still seeing this being driven lower and lower. And the slowdown in demand with partner countries has resulted in the presence of that actual inflation risk amongst the CPI. And there's a lot of opportunity for investment in this country due to the size and the diversity and just the vast opportunities. But they're starting to see a lot of that just be retrenched. And I wasn't able to find out why a lot of this was decreasing. I just realized that it was starting to decrease. But excuse me, basically that's the political and economical side of things in a small condensed form. There's a lot more to the whole entire issue, and it seems that the country's been facing a lot of these economical risk and political risk for quite some time now, for a few years. In order for all of this to be, for example, for the rupee to be at a 10-year low, and just for everybody to consider protesting and significant reform, that's just not come yet. But we won't see any progress as far as what I've seen from the articles and the websites and the research that I've done. We won't see any of this possibly shift to a positive light until after the elections in May. So that's about it for my side of things.